Hello and welcome to the Lead Well Summit. Today I have some incredible guests with me, Corey Osterud and Jessica Walla. They are master breathwork facilitators and founders of the Reset Breathwork method. Known as the Healing Couple, they lead soul-changing experiences to help high achievers heal from the inside out, unlock ultimate freedom, and amplify their lives and their impact. Please welcome the Healing Couple.
Hello.
Hey.
Thanks for having us, Hannah.
Thank you for
to be here.
For those of you who don't know, I've had the immense privilege of getting to experience their work in House of We, and I'm so excited for you to get to dive in. I know breathwork is breathwork's been around for a long time, but also it's really, coming on the scene and people are very excited and curious. But I want to start with having each of you share about your own leadership journeys and how you found your way here.
Yeah, I think that's a great story. I think where my journey started is when this amazing, beautiful human was not in my life. I was on a completely different path. And I think a lot of people can resonate with this right now. I think, especially in the last couple of years, just with what's going on in the world, there's just been a great shifting in migration. And it's a beautiful thing. I would say that my life about 6 years ago was way different. And I was living by society standards. I went to college, and then after college, I took care of my mom with her health. And then I went to medical school in Arizona. I was in a long-term relationship. I was in at that time, 10-year relationship. And I got engaged because that was the thing to do. We had a condominium, we had a dog, we had all the things, right? And I thought that is what happiness and success was. And I went so far, even after medical school, to open my own practice and then partner with a couple of my classmates. We were successful, of course, because I was so hardworking, so diligent, that we ended up upgrading and doing a huge, massive build out. We had 10 employees, 6 doctors, $36,000 every month in overhead. It was a beast. And at the time, my personal life was starting to fall apart. My partner left. One day she just walked out the door and never came back. It was really crazy. And my business partners were questioning whether I should be in the business. And we ended up having a ceremony, like a grand opening for this new building. And everyone showed up. It was so crazy. Like if you're familiar, North Scottsdale is like a suburb in Phoenix, and the mayor showed up. Like some people from the city council showed up. My old mentors showed up. There was about 200 or 300 people. And at the time I was dating her. And so she even showed up, and we had been dating only a couple of weeks, I think, at that point. So Jessica drove out from San Diego for this big event. And it was everything, right? Cameras, like it was on the local news, everything. There was even a red ribbon banner that the mayor had the big golden scissors and was going to cut, right? Like it was that official. And so I'm standing there in this beautiful building that we just built out, that her uncle actually helped, by the way, build out. And this mayor is like cutting the ribbon. And I kid you not, it was one of those moments where like time like almost slowed down to a stop. And I had this feeling in my heart and in my gut of, oh no, I'm living someone else's life. And that moment, as terrible as that feeling felt, I'm so glad I felt that feeling and I leaned in, because everything that you see before me is because of that moment, and me choosing in that moment, as that ribbon was getting cut by those beautiful golden scissors, that like this was not my life. And I had been doing all these things leading up to it that were incredible, but it was based upon what other people had told me was the definition of success or the definition of leading my life. And so I was leaderless in my own life. And so I started out on this whole journey. So I walked away. from the practice, didn't ask for a dime, sold my condominium, moved with Jessica all the way to San Diego, and restarted my life from the ground up. And it wasn't easy. It wasn't easy, but I am so thankful that I'm here today, because now I know I'm fully living in the expression and the embodiment and the leadership of what I want to create and envision in this world. So yeah, that's part of my story.
That's so powerful. I mean, I just think the courage to walk away from everything as it's been defined and identified, and it makes sense on paper. And the courage to be like, I can let all of that go because there's something else. And also, I'm sure, I want to hear from Jess. I want to hear your leadership journey too.
Yeah. I think my leadership journey really started back when I was in college, at a time where I too wasn't really fully leading my own life. And I was looking outside of me for all of the answers. I was looking outside of me for approval from others, looking outside of myself for joy, for happiness, for love. And I hit a moment of rock bottom when I was about 19 years old, when I got diagnosed with epilepsy, and I was dealing with seizures due to really high stress. Like, I was very high strung, very anxious, and it was affecting my physical health. And around that time is also when I got into practices like breathwork. I never heard of breathwork or meditation or yoga. I thought these things were really weird. And when I had friends dragging me and telling me like, hey, I think you could really use this work. And I finally caved. And when I experienced breathwork for the first time, I was actually really, really in my head the entire time. And then I was like, you know what, there's something to this. I'm going to keep coming back. And then the second time I did it, I just surrendered and I let go. And for the first time, I experienced true joy from within. It was just ultimate bliss. And I'll never forget, after coming out of that breathwork experience, I went to the grocery store, and it was a grocery store that I always went to. And I remember the automatic doors like opening when I walked in. And walking into that grocery store, everything just seemed brighter. Everything just seems so much more clear. Like, I was seeing my life and the world in a completely different way. And I was just walking down every aisle, just like smiling at people. And like, it was this immense joy. And from then on, I realized that happiness really comes from within. And I started to lead my life where I kept asking the question of, is this going to make me truly happy? Is this going to bring me fulfillment and happiness? And if it's a no, then I'm not doing it. And that's how I really led my life. And I think that for me is what leadership looks like. Is it starts with, we think of like leadership as like, oh, you have to be the president, or you have to have like 10,000, 100,000, a million followers on Instagram. You have to have people following you and listening to your giant message. But it really starts with you and how you're leading yourself, and the decisions and the choices that you are making. And that's embodied leadership. And it really led me to this point, because I started working for other leaders, other thought leaders. I was working for a lot of New York Times bestselling authors and organizing events and doing social media and whatnot. It was really cool to be behind the scenes of very powerful leaders who were really sharing a powerful message and were so embodied. And it came to a point where I told myself, like, I have a message too. I was always the person that was kind of behind the scenes and supporting them. And it got to a point where, because of the work I was doing with breath work, with yoga, with psychology, like, and really helping people heal from within, like, it helped me so much that I knew I had to help others. And so that's what led me to step into what we're doing now, which is starting our own business. Like creating our own programs, creating our own teacher training program to teach others how to lead other people in their community and their clients. And it started from me leading myself
Mm-hmm.
throughout my life.
Yeah, that's so powerful. I also was really fortunate to have early mentors who are very embodied and very integrous. And that really set a tone for what leadership meant to me. And to have also seen and worked behind the scenes with other people who are in huge leadership roles who don't have that foundation.
Yeah.
And to feel the conflict of oh, this person isn't self-led, and to see what transpires as a result of that. So I'm curious, how did you find breath work, and how has that really shaped? Because
Yeah.
it's the cornerstone of the healing that you provide now, even though you guys both have such an array in terms of the skill set.
Right. Yeah. So it's funny story. So I told you at the end of my story, I sold my practice, sold my condo, pretty much packed up all my belongings into my little car and then drove to San Diego, and Jessica helped me. And so right before I did that, one of the things that Jessica was doing is she was in a yoga teacher training. She was in the first yoga teacher training she ever did. And so we were long distance. So she was in San Diego, I was in Arizona. And because of everything that was happening in my life, I just was super busy. So we only had pretty much at night to have conversations. So we'd always have these late night phone calls where we'd almost fall asleep, when you're talking to somebody and then you wake up and you're like, oh, you're still there? Yeah, I'm still there. And so I was hearing about Jessica's yoga teacher training experience, and there's something that she so wanted to do and create and implement in her life. And there was a week I remember where you got exposed to a similar technique that we do now. And so she went into this class and she did the breathwork class and then came out of it. And then later that night called me, and the things, Hannah, that were coming out of her mouth, the scientific, medical-based, very conventional kind of guy was hearing Jessica liberating past traumas from her family, seeing herself rise to this, unbelievable height, experiencing all these ranges of emotions, seeing these beautiful visuals and in ceremony. And I remember listening on the phone, being pretty tired and going, okay, she's a cool girl. And this is unlike anything I've ever heard of. So either she's telling the truth or she's really crazy.
Yeah.
And I decided, hey, you know what? I think she's really cool. I'm gonna try this out for myself. And so I think a couple of weeks later, you had asked the teacher, how do I share this? How do I do this work? And she enrolled herself into a breathwork teacher training. And I said, I want to go too. So my first experience with this form of breathwork was in a teacher training. And so that's really how it started.
Yeah, you just head first.
Head first. That's how I operate.
That's how Corey operates. Yes. And also, to give a little more context, Corey, you had gone to the Amazon for 2 weeks and had done plant medicine and ayahuasca and had the similar experiences I was experiencing with breath work. So he was like, just with your breath, you were experiencing these visions and this deep healing. And it was really and then after you experienced it, it was like plant medicine without the plant medicine. And that's how powerful we are as our own healers, is that just through our breath, we can heal deep traumas. We can heal things that we've been holding on to for days, for weeks, for months, for years. And we don't have to go to the Amazon to do it.
No.
Yeah. I don't know if I shared this with you guys, but the vision for the Lead Well Summit, and the vision was born bigger than just this event, happened in a weed flow practice, in the breathwork process. And when you see the graphic, because obviously you don't get to see it, but the people who are listening will have seen it before they get to listen to you. It was sort of like that experience. It's this kind of explosion of intergalactic color. And it was just this oh, here's the assignment.
Oh, wow. Right.
And feeling and then the logical brain being that's a lot of work. And then being Like, let's go.
Yes.
Yeah, it's so powerful. Okay, so for people who aren't that familiar, what exactly is breath work and how is it different from meditation? Because it's not just like, yeah.
Right. So I will say, just in terms of meditation, so many people come to us saying, I've tried meditating before. I've tried to just sit with my eyes closed and try to like shut my mind off and like turn off all my thoughts and my racing thoughts. And I just can't seem to do it. I really struggle with sitting and meditating. But people find that breath work is so much easier. It many people equate breath work, the specific method that we have created, which is called the reset breathwork method, that it is equivalent, just one session, just one 30-minute session is equivalent to 100 meditations. So it goes much deeper than meditation. And the thing is, I love meditation. So I'm not knocking it. And it's a very powerful practice, but really breathwork speeds things up.
It's an active form of meditation.
Yeah.
It's for the people who are more busybody, who are in their head, like you're saying.
Yeah. So really, if you could break down breath work, it's broken up into two components. One is awareness of your breath. Because, and if you're listening right now, we're breathing all the time, but you're probably not thinking about your breath.
Now you are.
But now you are. You're not thinking about every inhale and every exhale that you take. It just happens. But with breath work, you are actually becoming aware of how you're breathing. And just that alone, when we can tap into and notice, okay, am I breathing really fast? Am I breathing slow? Am I breathing deep? Am I breathing shallow? When you can just tap into that, you'll notice that naturally your breath will start to deepen. You'll start to just naturally change how you're breathing. And then the second part of breath work is a specific breathing pattern, really changing the pattern of your breath. Because most of us, we breathe in this particular pattern all the time, all day long, that we're not aware of. The beautiful thing about breath is that typically we allow our emotions, our thoughts to run the show, right? And that impacts our breathing pattern. We just breathe in that way. So think about it. When you're anxious, you breathe in a certain way.
Oh, yeah. Sometimes if I'm stressed out, I'll notice like I am holding my breath.
Yes. Yeah. That we're not even, you'll hold our breath for a long time. Exactly. Yeah. But the thing with breath work is that you actually shift your breathing pattern, which then shifts your emotions. It shifts your thoughts and your behaviors. So it's like a two-way street. And so that's really breath work at its simplest form. And there's many different types of breath work. There's many different breathing patterns. There's some breathing patterns and some modalities or methods that will help you to really feel more energized in your body. So if you're feeling really lethargic, there's certain methods that will help with that. There's certain breathing patterns that will have you feel more balanced. It'll bring your body into more harmony. So if you're feeling really scattered or feeling kind of like you're not really focused, there's breathing patterns for that. There's also breathing patterns to help calm and relax the body and have you feel more grounded. And so with this particular method that we've created, the Reset Breathwork method, it's really designed to create the most amount of healing and transformation in the shortest amount of time. And not gonna lie, it's really intense, as you've experienced. We're breathing in a really intense pattern to actually drive the sympathetic nervous system, which is the part of your nervous system, which is fight or flight. So we're actually getting you into a heightened state, but in a very safe environment,
right? Which
then what happens is that after you're complete, it puts you into this deep state of calm, of relaxation.
Yeah. How did you, I was actually going to ask about the reset method. And so you kind of shared, why you chose this, but I mean, there are so many modalities, what was that process like of being like, what needs to happen here? And what was the intention behind, we want to create rapid transformation. We want to move people into the sympathetic nervous system because, right? Yeah, I'm just curious about kind of like the nerd in me wants to
Yeah. So let's dive into this. So I think what's happening right now is there, like you had mentioned at the beginning of this call, is that breathwork has been around forever.
Yeah.
And just as long as we've existed, we've been breathing, right? And we're in this symbiotic relationship where we breathe in oxygen and expel carbon dioxide. And then there's nature, right? Bushes, trees, leaves that take in that carbon dioxide and then turn it back into oxygen. And so there's this balance that occurs on a global scale. And that same balance occurs within us. And unfortunately, the way that our nervous system, the balance, right, has been operating for millions of years, about 2.5 million years, is either we're in a state of fight or flight, we're running away from that bear, right, that lion, something that's going to kill us, or we're in a relaxed state where we can digest, we can procreate, we can make beautiful love, right? We can connect with other human beings. And those two states have kind of existed in, how do I want to say this? They've existed in a way that has kept us safe.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, right now, technology, society, just human evolution and engineering is occurring at such a fast pace. I mean, think about it. My great grandfather had a horse. I don't know how old your great grandfather is, but my grandfather is like, he died at 98 or 93.
Wow.
And then, his father was like 100 years old. So I'm talking about a couple hundred years ago, like 200 years ago, there weren't cars.
Yeah.
There were horses.
Yeah. And now we have computers in our watches and eyeglasses and
yeah. And we have this thing, that's called a phone that literally gives us access to the entire internet, the entire interweb. And so just talking about that globally, our nervous system is receiving all that information. Mm-hmm. And so we are really only set up to be in close contact with about 150, maybe 200 human beings in our lifetime. I just dropped Jessica off. She had a massage and it was a 6-minute drive. I probably drove past 200 people, right? And so that overload, that sensory overload for our nervous system, our ancient nervous system, it's really difficult for it to decide, okay, is all this sensory input, is this fight or flight? Should I run away from this and hide or try to defend myself? Or is this a relaxing state? And I think for most people's nervous systems, they get confused.
Yeah.
They get really confused. And so coming back to the breath, like Jessica said, if you can breathe in a particular pattern and that can dictate your emotional state, right? Fight or flight, rest and digest. How can we get you there? Mm-hmm. And I think through probably the early 2000s, especially the 90s with the yoga movement, a lot of people were focusing on just the relaxed part. What are some techniques that can get you into a relaxed state? And I think that's really important overall. I think that's very important for overall for people to have really simple, quick techniques to get them into a relaxed state. But the trick is, in order to create homeostasis, in order to create balance within your nervous system, you have to have a new signal input, and it has to be stronger than all the sensory input that you're getting with the new environment, right? With this rapidly evolving human evolution that we have. And so for me and Jessica, we looked at ourselves and we were like, okay, like, man, pranayama techniques, it's like very gentle breathing exercises are amazing, but you have to do them all the time in order to combat all the sensory input that you're experiencing in life, right? Your phone, your computer, the internet, cars, TV, television, text, media, right? And so me knowing so much about the nervous system, I said, hey, what if we did the opposite? What if we really went into this sympathetic zone and we created a new set point? We created such a strong experience for people that is what their nervous system acclimated to. And what will happen is all the other sensory input will go away. And that's why when you said you did a breathwork session with us and then had this huge, massive breakthrough around what you were going to create, what was happening is your brain was saying, oh my God, this experience, so incredible, so amazing. Oh, this is actually what we want to do. No matter how hard it is, no matter how much time it takes, no matter what is going on in my life, this is what's really important. All the other noise falls away. And so that's really at the heart of it, why we've decided to create this technique and go the opposite way, because that is the way to create the quickest transformation in the smallest amount of time.
Yeah, it really does feel like being just plugged right into source. It's like, are you ready? You know, you read, like I read the Bhagavad Gita, and it's like when they open the third eye, right? It's like, oh, it does feel like there's just this quickness and strength, and it's source. I don't know how to describe it. It's interesting because I was having a conversation earlier today about a book. Emily and Amelia Nagoski wrote this book called Burnout, and just the kind of the other pandemic we exist in right now, and especially in Western culture, of just continuous burnout. And they break it down in a way, you know, we think burnout is healed by like rest and taking a vacation. And really it's about completing the end of an emotional cycle. And they only offer a few tools, but one of them is breath work, is what they're like, breath work will complete an emotional cycle.
Yeah.
Which is just so powerful. I'm wondering how this helps, you know, in healing and regulating trauma, or like traumas that we're carrying, you know, through our lineage or through this overstimulation as entrepreneurs, as human beings.
Yeah. The way that I like to think about our bodies is it's cellular memory. And getting back to this whole conversation of like fight or flight or rest and digest, like how the body like makes that decision on which direction to go is based on the past. And so we have, you know, labeled like certain past situations under the guise of trauma. And rightfully so. There are so many traumatic things that happen in people's past that dictate how people behave and act towards the future. And a lot of that's unconscious. And we don't even realize it, even though we're very intelligent and we know this one thing that our dad said, or one thing that our mom said, or maybe we're abused or raped or traumatized in some really significant way, right? There's a whole spectrum of trauma, but that is stored inside of our body because the body's role is to keep us safe and have us survive. And so if we can remember, and our body actually prioritizes trauma over positive memory. It's like selective bias. It does that so that it can keep us safe. And so for like the entrepreneurs in the world, for somebody who's like experienced trauma, is wondering like, okay, so how can breath work liberate this out of my nervous system? Is that the technique that we teach, every time you breathe in this pattern, it's giving your body an opportunity to release that stuck trauma. And it's like, okay, Corey, like that's all right. How the heck does that happen? So how that happens, it happens on a structural level, it happens on a physiological level, and it also happens on an energetic level. And so structurally, what happens is you have this wonderful muscle called your diaphragm. And every time you breathe into your belly, it contracts and expands your lung field. And when that happens, it's connected to a nerve called your vagus nerve. And that vagus nerve goes all the way up to what's called your limbic brain. Another term for it is your reptilian brain. And this is the processing center for your trauma. That's technically the decision maker. And so if you can breathe in a certain pattern, and that's connected to your diaphragm, which is connected to your vagus nerve, which goes all the way to the center of where your mind decides what's trauma and what's not trauma, that gives your body an opportunity to break that cycle. Physiologically, what happens is when you breathe in this way, you're bringing in more oxygen, right? And that creates what's called a temporary alkaline state. That means that, and I'm sure you've heard about alkaline foods, right? Like eating
alkaline water,
water,
Yeah.
like right? And so, of course, alkaline water is very healthy for you. It's an antioxidant. And at the same time, what a temporary alkaline state in the brain and in the body does is it shuts off the fight or flight response. Because we are breathing in a really intense way, which will bring you to the sympathetic state. But if you breathe in this particular pattern long enough, what will happen is you shut off the higher executive functioning of the brain, which will trigger the fight or flight response. So essentially, you're going into the deep parts of the brain, the limbic brain, and getting out of your neocortex. And what's so great about that is 95% of what you do every single day past the age 35 is the same. We are habit making machines. So if you want to have a different life, if you want to have a breakthrough, if you want to let go of your trauma, you got to get out of your mind, because your mind is just a record of the past. And so you can do that by breathing in this pattern, ramping up your oxygen, creating a temporary alkaline state, and getting into the limbic center of your brain. And there's no other way I know how to do that other than plant medicine or having a spiritual experience randomly. So this is an intentional way to create that. And then on an energetic level, and I could talk about this forever, but energetically what happens is when you breathe in this pattern, you're actually raising the vibrational frequency. So for instance, Hannah, have you ever felt like a lot of vibrations or like tingling?
Oh my gosh, yeah. Well, I mean, especially through breath work, but yes. Yeah, like you rub your hands together or maybe a meditation. Yeah. And actually the first time I did a yoga class as a teenager, when we were in Shavasana, I felt tingling on my hands and feet. And I was like, is this magic or something wrong with me?
So part of it is having higher oxygen, lower carbon dioxide, getting the tingling, right? Mm-hmm. The other part is you are actually raising the vibrational frequency of your cells. So everything on planet Earth vibrates. Even this computer, this table that this computer is on, it is vibrating. And our eyes pick up that vibration as color. So everything that you see as a difference in color is actually a difference in vibration, right? So vibration is everywhere, okay? You are vibrating, Hannah, your individual vibrational signature is different than mine. And that is felt when I walk in a room and you're there, or you walk in a room and I'm there, right? It's something that we can feel. That feeling can also be interpreted for ourselves, except when we don't feel a change, we don't see and experience that. So for instance, like if you got on the highway right now and you like stamped on the gas and you went onto the freeway, you would feel that acceleration, correct? But once you got on the highway and maintained that speed, you don't really feel much of a difference, right? Same thing.
I acclimate.
Yeah, you acclimate, right? So the same thing happens with us. And when you do breath work, what that does is it increases your vibrational frequency. So your cells vibrate at a different frequency and you feel that, because that's the difference. That's the change. And what's so beautiful about that is when you breathe in that pattern, you increase your vibrational frequency and you feel that shaking, you're doing that. And that's imprinting in your nervous system. And so it's like a full loop of like you creating that experience, you feeling that change, integrating it in your nervous system. And you do it again. And you do it again, and you do it again, and you do it so many times, you become a different person. And I usually don't share this very often, but this is from 6 years ago, and this is my ID. This was me.
What?
Yeah.
I would think you're showing me a fake right now.
Right. Yeah. And I had to get a new ID because everybody kept thinking that. And so this breathwork technique, it can change you on a physical level, how you physically look, how you energetically feel, and how your body physiologically reacts. And so that's how I would answer your question in those 3 ways.
Okay. I'm gonna take a minute. I was actually going to ask why, breath work is the most important tool for transformation. I feel like you kind of shared that, but is there more?
There's always more, but I think that Corey really, really covered it. And I think at the heart of it, it is tapping into your subconscious. Mm-hmm. And because our subconscious really does run the show, but we can't control it or tap into that. But breathwork is one of the very few ways that we can tap into the subconscious, which lives in every single one of ourselves. And so by breathing in this, with this, especially this method,
Yeah.
you are accessing the subconscious within your cells. And that is how you reprogram your nervous system, reprogram your mind, reprogram your body. And we've seen so many, I don't know what else to call it besides miracles, with the thousands of clients and students that we've worked with, where they are reprogramming their whole life through the breath. And we've seen people who have had MS who say that when they do this particular method, they don't feel any pain, that all of it goes away. But with chronic autoimmune disease, where they feel like when they do breath work, it all goes away and they feel so calm and so light in their body. And it is the only time they feel that. There have been clients that have come to us that were on the verge of suicide and felt like, their thoughts were completely running the show and they didn't want to live anymore. And they did breathwork with us along with other therapies. And we made sure they were in a very safe environment and really had a lot of support. But they've, through multiple journeys and just a few months, completely changed who they were and felt so much happiness and joy and felt like they could finally connect with the people in their lives for the first time. We had somebody who experienced a lot of sexual abuse as a child, and they did some one online workshop with us. We had no idea how they found us.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And they sent us an email about a couple of weeks after that workshop. And they said, I experienced years of sexual abuse and I've done a lot of work with it. I did a lot of therapy. I really have gotten to a pretty good place. And they were about 30 years old at the time. However, that one breathwork workshop, it was the final piece. And she said, I am free. For the first time in my life, I am finally free. Free of all the things that have haunted me, of the things I've held in my heart, how it's held me back from relationships, from connecting, and what it did just mentally for me. Like it's just gone. And so thank you. And we've never heard from her again. Yeah. And that's it. There's so many stories like that we have after leading this for so many people. And that's the power of this. So we can talk about, the science and go on and on and on, and that's powerful, but really it's like what we have witnessed in the rooms that and the experiences that we've created. It's so hard to put it into words. It's just, it's miracles. And the beautiful thing about it is that you are the one that's doing it.
Right.
We're not doing it for you. It's you and you. It's you liberating yourself. And there is nothing more healing than that, I believe.
Yeah. It's interesting. It's profound. And it's sort of a theme that's come up in a lot of the conversations is this elimination of the pedestal in terms of healing, in terms of leadership, and this intrinsic redirection into our power. And I see you speak truth into that in what you're sharing. It's, you're like, it's just transformation. Just look.
Right. Exactly. And really coming back to leadership, this practice allows you to be in your own leadership. And I love that you said, yes, this is a way to let go of the pedestal. The pedestal completely falls away. And we always remind people, like, we are not your gurus. We are not God. We're here to guide you, but you're the one that's leading the way. And we're going to be right there with you. We're going to have you feel so held and so supported. And we're going to challenge you. We're going to stretch you. But like this, it's a way for people to get back in the driver's seat and lead their own damn life.
Right.
Yeah, it's funny. I remember listening to old tapes of, this is forever ago, Napoleon Hill and him talking about the subconscious mind, but his way of reprogramming it was by yelling at himself. And me being like, I don't think that's it. I don't think that's it for me.
But do you see what he was trying to do? He was trying to create a peak experience. He was trying to create a new set point for himself in a different way. And why we like breath work is there's so many other components to it. The nervous system, the energetics, right? The biochemistry. And like what he was trying to do is use his voice, which is great, it's dynamic, but he was screaming at himself to create an experience greater than his current standard. So his new set point that his mind could focus on. And so he was trying to do the same thing, just in a different way.
Yeah. I mean, well, this pathway for me feels a little bit more.
I'm not trying to defend him at all.
Yeah,
No. Yeah.
I'm sure that works. And it's interesting to see as somebody who like gets like, oh, well, this is how it works and why. I want to talk about the importance of embodiment and breath work for entrepreneurs, because, you know, as we're listening, it's like, clearly this is nervous system work, this is trauma work, this is transformation work, this is so much bigger than just, you know, how we often reduce like healthy lifestyle stuff. And to see two embodied leaders sitting in front of me, I would love for you to just touch on the importance of this, because it brings you back into embodied expression.
It is, it really, we worked with a lot of entrepreneurs, we worked with a lot of coaches, a lot of leaders. We've worked with people in Hollywood, people that we worked for Google, like just really high performers. And a lot of them say that breath work is their secret weapon, the thing that they have in their back pocket, their go-to for their success. It's kind of like the best kept secret to true embodied success and leadership and entrepreneurship. Because truly, if you don't have like your mind, your energy, your nervous system in balance, then first I would ask, what is it all for? And what are you really creating? What place are you coming from, and what kind of output is being created? Because when you are in a relaxed state, when you're in the parasympathetic state, when you can shut off all the noise and all the sensory input that Corey was talking about, when you can do that, the things that you can create from that place is just gold. You're more creative, you're more innovative, and you're more in tune with your truth. And it just happens naturally. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs really grind and really push. And I think there's times for that. I don't want to knock the hustle culture. And I think there's been quite a bit of that, where it's just like, no, you shouldn't work hard. You shouldn't. I think there's periods for that. However, what we've seen is there's been a complete overdrive, and then there's burnout. And when you're burned out, when you're in a state of stress, you're not able to really fully create. And so energy is really everything. So when you can really intentionally take care of your energy on a day-to-day basis, what you create is not only magic, but you're also in a flow state, and it also feels good. And we've been there where we're creating shit and it doesn't feel good. And you're just doing things to do them. And there's like, and so we're not sitting here saying that we're perfect. But when you can really align with your energy and really take care of that, everything comes into balance, not only like your work and your business and what you're creating, but also just your life and your happiness and your well-being. And that, I believe, is true freedom. That's and that's what most people come to us looking for. Yeah. I want to feel more free. So it starts here within you. And then you create that in your external environment, rather than trying to create it in the external environment and think, if I just make more money, and if I just get into a relationship, and if I just do these things in my business.
Yeah, like what I was doing, right? Like I was a doctor, I had the clinic, I had the fiance, I had the dog, the condominium, right? Like all the things.
And so it's just turning and shifting within, starting there, and then leading and creating out there.
Yeah. There's so much liberation in what you share. And it's funny because I watch people create their little cell of success, right? And then get stuck there. And also as a result, sometimes kind of like hot potato unhealed trauma, instead of freeing themselves so they can help others free themselves, which is exactly the work that you do. I'm curious, how this process has helped you both as entrepreneurs in really expanding and being able to hold on a nervous system level, on from a grounded, embodied place, to be able to hold such deep space, to be able to support thousands of people, to be able to watch your income increase. Because I know for me that took some adjusting, to be like, is it safe to be here?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. What I would say is that breath work in my own personal practice has built up a resilience, a really strong, positive, clear resilience around where I desire to go. And so for me personally, and this is once again me diving in head first, is I did this technique every day for a year, 365 days. And what I learned from that is that there, of course, is a whole host of emotions that you experience throughout a year. And every time you dive into this breathwork technique, even though it's the same, it's a different experience, right? Right, Hannah? Like probably
Yeah.
like sometimes
Totally.
it's like nothing. Sometimes it's like galactic colors like you had described.
Sometimes I'm crying, sometimes I'm crying. I don't know.
Right. And so you get to be in this dynamic process with your breath. And so after doing it every time for a whole year, I came down with a lot of conclusions, but the biggest one for me was resilience and being able to step into these places and hold sacred space for 30, 40, 50, sometimes 300 human beings, and understand, while I did have that argument at the beginning of this conversation, like you're only meant to be with 150 people and that's overwhelmed for your nervous system. Yeah. Once you've cleared out a lot of the stuck trauma and a lot of the excessive sensory input, you can get laser focused and have so much mental resilience and fortitude for holding space for your own life, first and foremost, self-leadership, but also in a dynamic process for other human beings. And so I think resilience is really a huge key when it comes to breath work.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree with that. And when it comes to, like you were sharing, just like the box of success.
Yeah, the cell.
Right. And when you had asked about like, raising your income and really being able to hold more, it's like it's the resilience. It's reprogramming your nervous system to be able to hold more. And coming back to that analogy that you shared, Hannah, and I love this, like we have this box of success. We have our, in like The Big Leap, the book, The Big Leap, which I love, he talks about the upper limit problem, where we have these upper limits in our lives. We create our own ceilings of how far we can go, whether it's the amount of love that we can experience, the amount of money that we can have, the amount of freedom that we get to experience in our lives. And so we meet those edges. And once we start to meet that upper limit, we're like, oh, that's it. And I got to go back into my comfort zone, or we self-sabotage, or we do something to bring us back down to what feels comfortable. Again, that's just our nervous system, what feels comfortable in our nervous system. So when you can stretch it with the breath, really stretch what your nervous system can hold, you bust through those ceilings. You bust through your limitations that you've created sometime probably very long ago. And so for us, we had a lot of limitations on how much money we can make in our business, about how many clients we could have, about how much that we could do. So it was really us, but it always comes back to ourselves. It always comes back to looking back within and shifting that so that we can make more money than we could have ever dreamed of, so that we can have so much more freedom with our time than we couldn't have imagined 3, 4, 5 years ago. So we busted through our own limitations and created so much more possibility. So that box you're talking about, we busted through the box.
You're like, what box?
Yeah. But now we've put ourselves in a new box.
Right.
So it's continuing to bust through your own boxes and your own limitations that you've created.
Yeah.
Yeah. It is really cool. I've watched as you speak, and I'm like, there's this process and this self-leadership of, I'm going to continue to expand my threshold. I'm going to continue to meet myself. I'm going to continue to experience into who I get to become in this time, in this space, in the context of the world that we're in, right? In the context of, okay, like I'm my reptilian brain, 150 people or millions,
Right.
and
Right.
healing.
Right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, I have a couple rapid fire questions to finish with.
Let's do it.
What is your vision for the world?
So my vision for the world is that everyone understand that they are their own healer. And once you heal yourself, you can heal the world. And one of the ways that we feel you can do that is with the breath. And my vision is to share this work with as many human beings as I can, so that I can look at Jessica. And I've always had this vision of us like being old in the wheelchairs, holding hands,
real
like,
wrinkly
till my last breath, when I get to look at her and say, we did it all. We did it all.
That's it.
That's it.
That's so beautiful. Okay. What does wealth mean to you?
It's rapid fire.
It's rapid fire. Okay. I tend to
I know.
I
know they can go really deep.
Yes. The first word that comes to me is liberation.
Mm-hmm.
Is liberation. Wealth is just liberation in motion.
Mm-hmm.
It's always moving, and it's something that is felt, that is held, that is circulated. Wealth is something that you hold and that you also give. It's like this beautiful, beautiful exchange. And we desire to create more wealth, because we believe that when good people make good money, this is something that Chris Harder says, when good people make good money, they do great things with it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I believe that's healing.
Yeah. Amen. What does leadership mean to you, and how has that definition changed over time?
Yeah, I think leadership really means like listening to yourself. And that can occur along any spectrum of success or any period in your life, is really listening to yourself and listening to yourself from the perspective of, what do I desire and what would make me feel peace and joy and calm? Because if you go after that, if you really go after that in your self-leadership, you will create a ripple effect. You will affect people that you meet at the grocery store, that you meet at the yoga studio, that you bump into on a plane. I mean, we had a conversation with this girl on, we just flew back from the Midwest. We were meeting with family, and she was going to Nashville, and she was 13, probably. She was in 8th grade, and she was really tall. Like, she was almost as tall as me. And she had this vision of being an artist, being a costume design artist. And she had the skill set. She showed me she had like costumes she's already getting paid for, and like Comic-Con stuff. And it was beyond me, right? Beyond my comparison. I remember her like getting really quiet at one point when she was talking about this, and she's like, oh, like, is this too much? Like, is this awkward? And I'm like, hey, I didn't even know her name. I was like, hey, this isn't awkward at all. I'm just so excited for you and your journey and all the joy that you're already creating in your life, and you're just getting started. And so for me, like, those moments in not only self-leadership and listening to myself, but also listening to other people and encouraging them to take that next step is like so rewarding, because I'm like, that one conversation, maybe I'm one of the only people that was ever like, hell yeah, do it. Like, if that changes thousands of people's lives over her entire life and I never speak to her again, that's leadership.
Yeah, it's one of the things that I love the most about my work, is that people will come to me and share this big vision, big idea that they're so excited about, but they're also afraid is maybe crazy or maybe too much. And like, I get to be the person to hear that and to hold space for that. And I think, like, just how fucking cool, how lucky am I? Something or someone that's inspiring you, and why?
I know this is rapid fire, but
everyone, she's a projector.
Yes.
And so she takes the information in. And I got one if you want me to go.
Yeah, go.
Yeah.
I think it might inspire me.
Yeah. So I've had this huge moment lately around the way of being in my life. And I think that like, well, thank you so much for your compliments, Hannah, around like seeing like, oh, I see two beautiful healers that are so in their power and their vision and all these things. Like there's certain areas of my life where I don't necessarily have it figured out. And one of those areas was my relationship with my father. And it was very strained ever since I was 16 years old. And at the time he was dealing with a lot of mental health issues and I didn't understand it. And so sometimes he would leave for a while and then come back. And I just didn't feel fully supported by him. And so I had a moment where my best friend died in high school on the basketball court. And we went to the funeral, and in the parking lot afterwards, my parents told me that my dad was going to leave for a little while and they were going to get separated. And ever since that moment, I felt like I didn't have a father or didn't have like that father figure in my life. And I had a huge wake-up call about 2 weeks ago. And that was around the fact that for years I had harbored resent, like shame, righteousness, judgment towards him for that situation. And I have so desperately at the same time wanted this father figure. And I had a friend, as I was telling him this and telling him, I don't feel like I have a father, like he stopped me and goes, Corey, are you willing to soften into the beingness of being a son? Like, are you willing to do that? And I was like, whoa, it was like a waterfall moment for me. Cause I realized like I had filled up my cellular memory, my container with all this being righteous, being angry, being judgmental, being upset. And there was no room for me to be a son to my father. So how could my father have a son? And so I went home with Jessica to the Midwest, and it was the first time since I've been 16 that I consciously breathed with the intention of being a son. And I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know how to operate. It felt like I was a fish out of water. I can lead 300 people through breath work and have an out-of-body experience, but I can't be a son, right? And so I got the pleasure of being in the presence and having the compassion of being a son to my father and starting to heal that relationship in a really big way. And so I never thought I would say this, but I really look up to my father because he received that. Like he listened and we had conversations and he did things that he never did before. Like he drove us 6 hours one way to Jessica's parents' house because all we could get was a Greyhound because you can't rent cars right now. And he drove all the way there and then all the way back. And an idea of having a conversation with my dad for 6 hours stuck in a car would have been torture like 4 weeks ago. But last week, it was one of the best conversations I ever had. So I really look up to my dad. Yeah. I know it's supposed to be rapid fire.
I know. I'm just like, bring it. This is beautiful.
Yeah. You know, so freaking powerful. Because I've seen this in Corey, you know, and it's just so beautiful to see you also step into your leadership, like with your family, you know, and that's real, especially for entrepreneurs. We think about leadership and we usually think about it in the context of business and of work and of our clients and of our followers on Instagram. Mm-hmm. But leadership is also, how are you leading yourself within your family, with your friends, with your, you know, with your close circles? Like, who are you outside of your business as well? And what does leadership look like in that? And so to see you really just stretch into this whole new level of leadership in your personal life has been incredible. And similarly, I mean, this trip back to the Midwest with our families was just like, it was a whole spiritual experience in and of itself. And so, yes, we've been talking about how breath work can open up, you know, so much transformation and all this, like, that's beautiful. But I always say, like, or what I've learned these last 2 weeks is that you don't have to necessarily wait for a breathwork class or wait for a yoga class or a plant medicine ceremony in order to have transformation and have a spiritual experience? What if your entire life was just a spiritual experience? That everything that
Yes.
you interacted with
Yes.
was a spiritual
Yes.
experience. And I really got present to that when I was with my family. So when you first asked this question of who's been inspiring you lately, I'm trying to think of, some of our mentors and our coaches and like, some big prolific person, but really my family is inspiring me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
My sister, my mother, my father. Because they're showing me, they're being a mirror for me of what I have not yet healed, of where I still get to do my work. And yes, we can avoid it all day long and make excuses or make someone else the enemy. But they've really inspired me to look within myself. And sometimes our family can be the hardest, but they can be the greatest gifts.
I believe that too, because it's like you can be someone that's well regarded out in the rest of the world, and you come home and it is the most humbling experience and really the biggest spiritual assignment. You're like, oh no, you still see me as this, okay? Yeah. Right, we're here.
That's right.
That's the perfect word, Hannah, is humbling.
Mm-hmm.
That it was, every moment was just pure humility.
Mm-hmm.
It really is humbling.
Okay, last question. I'll take it a little lighter, I hope. Favorite way to celebrate?
So yeah, me and Jessica have really made it a point in our personal life as well as our business to celebrate first. That's the first thing that we do. So whether it's launching a program or I don't know, experiencing something on the personal side of our life, like moving to Austin, like we celebrate first. And I would say that we're foodies. So we love our food. I have a little bit different taste now than Jessica, but man, oh man, we love Honey Mama's chocolate so much. And if you haven't heard of Honey Mama's,
I haven't.
Go look it up. Don't order it, by the way, because if you order it, the only way they can give it to you is in a freezer dry pack, and it's $35 a bar. So look up your local grocer, get them to get it. But we usually have our ever dying lasting love with Honey Mama's chocolate in Portland. Love you, Honey Mamas.
Yes, it's all organic, all vegan. It's raw. It's just like, you can't believe that it's like, this is chocolate and this is like,
it's heaven.
Yeah, it's literally heaven.
Yep.
And what I would add to that is we also I personally celebrate with just a good old dance party. I think there's like nothing better than just like, and even if Corey's resistant, I'm like, I'm going to turn on some music and we're going to freaking boogie right now. And just
sometimes I feel like a tall tree because I'm 6'5", and then she's dancing around my tree.
Yeah. So just really the most simple things. And of course we do other things where we, where we really stretch ourselves, financially and really celebrate and, whether it's going on a trip or just really treating ourselves and celebrating that way. But it gets to be so simple with like chocolate and a good dance party to celebrate. And that's been a real practice.
I love what you said about the experiences too. I think that like for people who feel stuck right now, to celebrate first, even if you don't feel like it, is so important, and to do it from an experiential perspective. So one of the things I do as a guy, I love cars. I think they're a work of art. So maybe you've seen me on my Instagram, but like anytime we're in San Diego, you better believe I'm going to be renting a 718T Porsche Carrera T-top, like Teslas. We're going to get a Mustang. Like living that experience is so great for sensory input in your nervous system. And so I love me a nice fast car.
Yes.
Yeah.
But yeah, it gets to be simple too. I
love that. My partner, when we go on vacation, we have to rent a convertible.
Yeah.
Convertible Avery. That's his thing. And you have to, unless it's raining, the top has to be down.
Absolutely. I love that.
That's so right.
Awesome. So for everyone who's just been so captivated by the richness of this conversation, what is the best way to connect with you?
Well, we love hanging out on Instagram. So if you're on Instagram, come follow us, come say hello, send us a DM. We respond to every DM. So if there's a part of this conversation that really resonated with you, send us a message and let us know what that is. And we love connecting with people and being in community. So Instagram is a great place. And of course, you can always email us. We're the Healing Couple at gmail.com, and to learn more about what our offerings are and whatnot, and to really experience our work, we can go to thehealingcouple.com, and you can find our teacher training there, our immersion program that we offer. And we're really just here to be of service and to create an even larger community, because we believe that we heal in community. So please do reach out to us, and we can't wait to connect with you.
And we'll have all of those links available for you on the Healing Couples speaker page as well, in case you missed them. Jess, Corey, thank you so much for just the richness of the last hour, for all of your brilliance and wisdom, and also just your openness and willingness to just share and emote and connect with me and with all of us today.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah,
Yes.
we really hope you guys enjoyed this.
Yes. Thank you, Hannah, for this opportunity. It was truly our pleasure.
Amazing. And thank you everyone for tuning in.